Hello, this is Jackson Agan, and today I will be giving you a brief summary of the way in which the Impressionist movement in art has had an influence on street photography throughout history. At the time of the Impressionist movement, street photography was yet in its infancy, as developments in portable cameras were slowly coming along. Photography's role in the realm of the arts was still a point of tension, with many believing it to be inferior in its mechanical nature and its lack of skill, quote unquote. In an article published in the British Journal of the Society of Arts in 1890, George Davison set out to establish a defense of photography as an art form, drawing specific comparisons to the Impressionist movement in art. Davison writes praising the way in which Impressionist artists forsake the studio in favor of the beauty of the world outside and the people in it. He believes that the new postures adopted by Impressionists peel away at the complexity of technique that bar the viewer from truly connecting with the subject. The painter's art, Davison writes, has been trammeled by conventions and chained by dogma in a manner tending to obscure and lead away from the greatest beauty in pictures, namely their truth to nature. There is a supposition in this view of an insufficiency in nature, and those who adopt this view must look for the beauty and interest in conventional cleverness of brushwork or in the fitness of parts for telling a story, and not to the subtle truths of the picture. By its very nature, he argues, Impressionism, and thus photography, eliminates the artist's interference with our perception of the moment in time they have captured. By doing so, they allow the viewer to truly connect with the subject in the way that they do. Using a camera, he argues, is quite similar to Impressionist painting in the way that it asks the viewer to engage with the image. The street photographer, much like the Impressionist, does not get in the way of the artistically beautiful nature of the reality before them. They step out of the studio and into the streets beyond, acting as the eyes of their future viewers and finding beauty in natural subjects, capturing them as they are, so that that experience lives on in their work. Like Impressionists, street photographers, by the nature of taking to the streets of cities around the world, find their subjects not amongst the bourgeois aristocracy, but amongst the people one encounters every day. They examine the beauty in all corners of the human experience and in the societies that humans have built. To review, booming in the late 1800s, Impressionism was a European art movement epitomized by the act of the artist working outside the studio. The movement's name comes from its goal, to capture an impression of the world as it is in the moment. Impressionists focused their work on quick brushstrokes, capturing their impression of their subject in the moment, with emphasis on temporally specific attributes like lighting. When Impressionists painted people, it was in natural, usually outdoor settings, rather than in the studio context of earlier portraiture. French Impressionist Berthe Morisot has a large breadth of work featuring human subjects. Morisot's work follows the Impressionist trend of focusing on subjects in the moment. Her subjects don't often look like as if they're posing for a portrait, rather like the artist captured them in that moment, like any of us could see them if we were to walk around a park in 1800s Paris. Throughout her painting career, Morisot sought to carry the Impressionist ideal of representing the world as it is further than many others. Her subjects don't only heavily feature women, they feature working women. Coming from an upper-class family herself, Morisot sought to capture impressions of her home and all its people, not just those who you would usually expect to be featured in portraits. Morisot represents the theoretical background of Impressionism taken to its extreme. One of the most famous street photographers of all time, Henri Cartier-Bresson, led a long career, traveling around not only the cities of his homeland, France, but around the world, taking candid photographs of people as they went about their lives. Cartier-Bresson's work is striking, to say the least. Some of his photographs feature singular human subjects, some crowds. In a way, although Cartier-Bresson was beginning his stride, decades after his plea to the art community, it was the epitome of what Davison had described. Cartier-Bresson's photography carried on the spirit of Impressionism in that it stripped away overt stylization to enhance both realism and the viewer's experience of the world. Importantly, and also not unlike Impressionist work, Cartier-Bresson's photography is not done without compositional work on the side of the artist. Many of his photographs are brilliantly composed, taking into account angle and lighting to heighten the aesthetics of the image. However, Cartier-Bresson's goal in his composition maintained the spirit of realism. When Cartier-Bresson carefully lines up his angles, he does so not to artificially give beauty to his subjects, but to heighten their inherent beauty. His work seeks to make the sensory connection between the present viewer and the past subject as immediate and clear as possible. In this sense, while his artistic methods differ, his goal is the very same as Impressionists like Bertha Morisot. Street photography is still incredibly popular today, in no small part due to the bolstering of social media. There's an inherent charm to the premise, a comfort in being guided by a skilled hand to examine the artistry of the world we live in. In such a way, the specter of Impressionism continues to have a presence in the world of photography. Today, in fact, perhaps one of the most popular photography projects in history carries on that tradition from Cartier-Bresson and the Impressionists before him. Photographer Brandon Stanton's social media project, Humans of New York, is an ongoing collection of photographs paired with interviews and stories documenting the people Stanton comes across out on the town. Stanton's process is simple. He greets people on the street, asks to take their picture, then gives them a short, or sometimes long, interview. Like the work of Cartier-Bresson, Stanton's use of composition is deceptively simple. His work is satisfying to look at, clean, thoughtful, and highlighting the city settings in which he meets his subjects. But the goal of his work is never to lose the viewer in complex artistic stylization. Stanton's use of composition is meant to be paired with his captions, to focus the viewer in on the photo as a snapshot of reality. Through Humans of New York, Brandon Stanton is continuing the spirit of Impressionism, using his art to present snapshots in time, in a sense giving immortality to the beauty of his subjects.